You think you remember them. The kind constable, the village doctor, the cheeky rogue always up to something. But what if I told you that many of the Heartbeat cast never found happy endings? Behind the cameras, their lives were filled with illness, heartbreak, and sudden loss. Today, we uncover the tragic fates of the stars you thought would always be there. Derek Fowlds as Sergeant Oscar Blaketon. If Greengrass was chaos, Oscar Blaketon was control. Derek Fowlds joined Heartbeat in 1992 at 55, playing the strict sergeant who kept Aidensfield in line. But what fans didn't see was how much real-life pain he carried into the role. Fowlds first found fame as Bernard Woolley in Yes, Minister and Yes, Prime Minister, a polished, witty role that made him a household name. Yet success came at a price. He grew frustrated being seen only as the polite civil servant, and when roles slowed down in the late 80s, he slipped into depression. Producers doubted his versatility, and he was terrified that his career might end before it truly began. Heartbeat gave him a second chance, but it also brought pressure. Fowlds admitted in later interviews that the long shooting schedule, combined with his personal struggles, pushed him toward heavy drinking. The weight of losing his son in a car crash in 1980 haunted him, and he often used alcohol just to make it through the day. Still, his talent shone through. Blaketon's transition from police sergeant to pub landlord allowed Fowlds to reveal the humor and heart audiences didn't expect. His work in Heartbeat, alongside his iconic performances in Yes, Minister and Affairs of the Heart, became the pillars of his long career. But his final years were clouded by illness. Chronic heart disease weakened him, and a small wound that developed into sepsis ended his life in 2020 at 82. To many, his passing felt like losing a part of British television itself. William Symonds as P.C. Alf Ventris. Everyone in Heartbeat knew that P.C. Alf Ventris was never the fastest runner, but he was the sharpest mind in the room. From 1992 onward, William Symonds gave life to Ventris with humor, wit, and quiet authority. At 52, he stepped into the role and never let it go, appearing in all 372 episodes across 18 seasons, the longest run of any male actor on the show. But Symonds' path to that milestone was scarred by hardship. Growing up poor in Wales, he lost his mother to tuberculosis in 1950, when he was just 9 years old. That grief never left him, and by his 20s he was already drinking heavily to cope. 3 times he checked himself into rehab, fighting to keep control of his life while trying to keep his acting career afloat. On screen, his name became tied to Heartbeat, but he also delivered memorable performances in Emmerdale and smaller British dramas. Yet the pressure of long filming days combined with personal turmoil left deep cracks in his private life. 2 marriages ended in divorce, and his relationship with his only son fell apart. He admitted once that work had stolen him from his family. Fans adored him as Ventris, the wise old constable with a twinkle in his eye, but the man behind the uniform was often lonely. Even as his popularity soared, he struggled with depression and isolation. It was a painful contrast, the jovial character on television versus the fragile man off camera. William Symonds passed away in 2019 at the age of 78, after quietly battling cancer. His estate was valued at around £1.8 million, but his true legacy lives in the countless hours of Heartbeat that still keep his memory alive. Bill Maynard as Claude Jeremiah Greengrass. You probably remember Greengrass as the cheeky rogue who always had another scheme up his sleeve. But playing Claude Jeremiah Greengrass in Heartbeat from 1992 wasn't just a comic act. It became Bill Maynard's defining role at a time when his career desperately needed saving. At 64, he transformed into the lovable trickster who kept audiences laughing for more than a decade. Maynard's career had begun decades earlier, with films like Carry On Loving and the sitcom Oh No, It's Selwyn Froggatt. But behind the humor, he was often fighting personal demons. He faced typecasting, struggled with his weight, and even admitted that heavy drinking nearly cost him his career. Casting directors often saw him as too difficult, and work dried up. When Heartbeat came along, it was both a lifeline and a rebirth. Greengrass allowed Maynard to show his best comic timing, but filming wasn't always easy. Long shoots in the Yorkshire Dales challenged his health, and his battle with alcohol never fully disappeared. Yet, the audience adored him, proving that his ability to make people laugh outshone everything else. Off-screen, tragedy shadowed him. His first marriage ended after years of strain, and his second wife Muriel's death from cancer in 2005 left him broken. Still, he returned for the spin-off The Royal, proving his dedication to the craft even while carrying grief. In 2018, after a fall from his mobility scooter, Maynard's health collapsed. He died at 89, remembered not only as Greengrass, but as a fighter who kept entertaining Britain through decades of personal struggle. Geoffrey Hughes as Vernon Scripps. When Greengrass left, Vernon Scripps stepped in, and suddenly Aidensfield had a new trickster in town. Geoffrey Hughes joined Heartbeat in 2002 at 58 years old, and over 100 episodes, he turned Scripps into a hilarious, bumbling schemer who always thought he'd found the next big fortune. He wasn't Greengrass, but his energy and timing kept the comedy alive. Audiences loved him, but off-screen Hughes was in constant battle with his own body. Diagnosed with prostate cancer in 1996, years before he joined Heartbeat, he endured rounds of chemotherapy that left him frail and exhausted. Behind the laughter he brought to television, he was carrying unimaginable physical pain. Hughes had already cemented his place in British television history long before Aidensfield. His roles as Eddie Yates in Coronation Street and Onslow in Keeping Up Appearances made him one of Britain's most recognizable comic actors. Yet fame didn't shield him from heartbreak. His first marriage ended in divorce, and in his later years he admitted to feeling the crushing weight of loneliness. Smoking since his teens, Hughes knew his habits only worsened his condition. Friends said he often joked about living on borrowed time, but behind the humor was a man who feared every test result. The long, drawn-out battle against cancer chipped away at his spirit. In 2012, at just 68, Geoffrey Hughes lost the fight. His death left fans mourning not just Vernon Scripps, but a comic genius who carried his pain in silence while making millions laugh. His estate was worth around £2 million, but his true wealth was the joy he gave to British television. Frank Middlemass as Dr. Alex Ferrenby. Every village needs a doctor who feels more like family than a professional, and in Aidensfield, that was Dr. Alex Ferrenby. Played by Frank Middlemass from 1992, Ferrenby was the wise, kind-hearted physician who balanced medical authority with compassion. At 73, Middlemass brought decades of acting experience into the role. But Middlemass's personal story carried deep loss. He lost his wife to cancer in 1980 and never remarried, spending the rest of his life in quiet solitude. Acting became both his refuge and his distraction, keeping him busy while he quietly battled loneliness behind the scenes. He was a familiar face to British audiences long before Heartbeat, with memorable performances in Porridge, To Serve Them All My Days, and Crown Court. But years of heavy smoking caught up with him. By the 1990s, he suffered from chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, COPD, making long days on set a physical struggle. Still, Middlemass pressed on. Castmates recalled how he would sometimes cough between takes, only to gather himself and deliver a flawless performance once the cameras rolled. His professionalism made him a pillar of respect among the Heartbeat cast. Frank Middlemass passed away in 2006 at the age of 87. His estate was worth around £800,000, but far more valuable was the dignity and warmth he brought to the role of Dr. Ferrenby, and the way he touched audiences who saw him as the heart of the village doctor's office. Peter Benson as Bernie Scripps. Bernie Scripps wasn't your friendly neighborhood mechanic. He was the stingy garage owner who always had one eye on profit. From 1995 until 2010, Peter Benson played the role with perfect comic timing, making Bernie both irritating and endearing at the same time. At 52 when he joined, he became a familiar face in Aidensfield for 15 years. But Benson's own life carried heavy shadows. His first marriage ended in divorce after 15 years, leaving him alone without children. He poured himself into acting, but off-screen the silence of his home weighed on him deeply. Friends later said that he often joked about being married to Heartbeat. Health troubles followed him into his later years. A lifelong habit of overeating led to obesity and eventually type 2 diabetes. Still, he never let it stop him from working. Week after week, Benson showed up on set, determined to give Bernie the same spark fans had come to expect. Outside Heartbeat, Benson had a respectable career, appearing in Shakespeare productions and television classics like All Creatures Great and Small. Yet it was Heartbeat that kept him in the public eye. Playing Bernie was both his blessing and his cage. He became so tied to the role that new opportunities rarely came his way. In 2018, at the age of 75, Peter Benson passed away after a short illness related to chronic heart disease. His estate was valued at around £1 million, but his true legacy is the countless laughs he gave as Aidensfield's unforgettable garage owner. Stuart Golland as George Ward. George Ward was the kind of pub landlord everyone wished they had. Kind, steady, and always ready with a listening ear. From 1992 until 1997, Stuart Golland played the role with warmth that made the Aidensfield Arms feel like the true heart of the village. At 47, when he joined, he became one of the most familiar faces of the early years of Heartbeat. But Golland's life was marked by devastating loss. In 1995, during the height of his TV success, his daughter was killed in a car accident. The tragedy broke him, and friends said he was never the same afterward. Acting gave him routine, but behind the bar of Aidensfield Arms, he was silently grieving. His career outside Heartbeat was modest but steady, with stage roles and smaller TV parts that showcased his natural, everyman charm. Yet his time on the show gave him more recognition than he'd ever experienced before. For many viewers, George wasn't just a character. He was part of their living room every Sunday night. Then came the hardest battle of all, a diagnosis of bowel cancer in 2000. Golland fought bravely for 3 years, enduring painful treatments that left him frail, but determined to keep working whenever he could. His resilience inspired those around him, but the disease took its toll. In 2003, at just 58 years old, Stuart Golland passed away. His estate was valued at around £500,000, but to Heartbeat fans, his real wealth was the warmth and humanity he brought to George Ward. Tim Brooke-Taylor as James Rhodes. James Rhodes wasn't a mainstay of Heartbeat, but his guest appearance in 1992 left a spark of comedy that reminded viewers how even small roles could light up the village. Played by Tim Brooke-Taylor at 52, Rhodes carried the actor's signature wit, the same humor that made him a legend in British comedy. Brooke-Taylor was already famous long before Aidensfield. As 1/3 of the Goodies comedy trio and a regular on I'm Sorry I Haven't a Clue, his quick-fire wit defined a generation of British humor. Yet comedy was also a double-edged sword. Audiences expected laughter, even when he was quietly struggling with his own personal grief. His wife's death left him shattered, and although he carried on performing, he admitted in interviews that the loneliness was overwhelming. On stage, he was energetic, but off stage he faced long nights alone, without the partner who had steadied him through decades of fame. Still, his career never slowed. He remained a national treasure, bringing joy through radio, television, and stage. His sharp intelligence made him a beloved guest across panel shows, and his legacy stretched far beyond a single role. In 2020, at the age of 79, Tim Brooke-Taylor contracted COVID-19 during the first wave of the pandemic. Already vulnerable, he passed away in isolation, far from the audiences who had adored him for decades. His estate was valued at £3 million, but his true gift was the laughter he left behind. Trisha Penrose as Gina Ward. Long before Gina Ward became the smiling face behind the bar, she was just a supporting character meant to add a touch of sparkle to the Aidensfield Arms. But once Trisha Penrose stepped in at only 23 years old, she transformed that role into the heart of the pub. For 17 years, Gina's laughter, charm, and vulnerability gave Heartbeat the sense of community fans still remember today. Outside the warmth of Aidensfield, Penrose's life was far less simple. When Heartbeat ended, she faced a crushing depression. Years of routine vanished overnight, and the pressure of the spotlight left her battling with self-image. Her weight climbed to 100 kilograms during her darkest times, and the tabloid press mocked her relentlessly, turning her private struggles into public headlines. Her personal relationships carried their own pain. Her first marriage to Eric ended after 5 years, a period she later described as one of the loneliest of her life. Though she found happiness again with Stephen Boehm, with whom she had 2 sons, even this new chapter brought hardship. A failed restaurant investment nearly left the family bankrupt, forcing her to fight for financial survival. Still, Trisha never gave up on her connection to fans. She reinvented herself on Celebrity Big Brother and on radio, hosting shows on Wirral where her natural wit made her feel like a friend to listeners. She even returned to the stage occasionally, proving she wasn't afraid to step back into the spotlight after setbacks. Today, at 55, Penrose lives in Cheshire with her family. With an estimated net worth of £1.2 million, she has found stability again, but for fans, she will always be remembered as Gina Ward, the spirited barmaid who carried Heartbeat's joy through nearly 2 decades. Mark Jordon as P.C. Phil Bellamy. Mark Jordon became unforgettable for the opposite reason. His portrayal of Phil Bellamy was grounded, honest, and deeply human. Starting in 1992 at just 27, he played the loyal constable who embodied duty and quiet bravery, a man who rarely sought glory but always stood by his village. But Jordon's real life was far more turbulent than Bellamy's steady presence. In 2009, his career came crashing down when he was arrested for assaulting a former partner. The conviction earned him a prison sentence of 4 months, and with it, he lost both his role on Heartbeat and his public reputation. For an actor once beloved by millions, it was a devastating fall. His private life carried equal turmoil. His marriage to actress Siobhan Finneran, Downton Abbey, ended in divorce, though they shared 2 children. Later, he remarried Emmerdale actress Laura Norton and had 2 more children. But his struggle with alcohol nearly destroyed that marriage as well. The battle for sobriety became as much a part of his life story as his acting. Despite scandal and personal demons, Jordon refused to disappear. He rebuilt slowly, finding work in Emmerdale and smaller projects, clawing back his career piece by piece. His resilience was tested constantly, but the determination to keep working and to be present for his children kept him moving forward. Now 60, Mark Jordon lives in Yorkshire with Laura and their family. His net worth is estimated at £1.5 million, but his true survival story is written not in numbers, but in the way he managed to rebuild after disgrace. To fans of Heartbeat, though, he will always be P.C. Phil Bellamy, the loyal constable whose quiet strength made him unforgettable. Nick Berry as P.C. Nick Rowan. When Heartbeat first aired in 1992, it was Nick Rowan who set the tone for the entire series. Played by Nick Berry at age 30, Rowan wasn't just a village policeman. He was the anchor of Aidensfield, the moral center around which every story seemed to turn. Across 110 episodes and 7 series, Berry's gentle authority and charm carried the show through its defining years. But Berry's off-screen journey was far more painful than the character he played. In 1993, just as Heartbeat was gaining momentum, his first wife died of a rare illness. The loss devastated him. He sank into depression and turned to alcohol as a temporary escape, fighting demons even as he was expected to smile for the cameras. Barry had already been a star from EastEnders and even enjoyed pop success with his single, Every Loser Wins. Yet fame couldn't shield him from the collapse of his private life. A second marriage ended in divorce, leaving him disillusioned with both his personal and professional world. Eventually, he found stability again with Rachel Robertson, with whom he had 3 children. Still, Barry often described himself as living in between worlds, a man defined by past heartbreak but still clinging to the normalcy of family life. His career slowed, with only occasional appearances on television as he chose to prioritize peace over public attention. Now 63, Nick Barry lives quietly in the English countryside. His net worth is estimated at £4 million, but fans remember him not for the money or even the fame, but for bringing Nick Rowan to life, the policeman who gave Heartbeat its soul. Niamh Cusack as Dr. Kate Rowan. Kate Rowan was never just the doctor's wife. From the moment she appeared in 1992, played by Niamh Cusack at 32, she was Aidensfield's voice of reason, a compassionate village doctor who balanced medical authority with a quiet, fiery independence. Alongside Nick Rowan, she gave the series its emotional depth, portraying a marriage built on respect, but also tension. Off-screen, Cusack faced challenges of her own. Coming from Ireland's legendary Cusack acting family, expectations weighed heavily on her shoulders. Every performance was compared to her sister's, and she often admitted the pressure sometimes left her feeling overshadowed rather than supported. Motherhood added another layer of struggle. After giving birth, she suffered from postpartum depression, a battle she rarely spoke about until later in her career. Balancing the demands of acting with the realities of family life almost broke her, and a short-lived separation from her partner reflected the cracks those pressures created. Yet Cusack endured. Her marriage to actor Finbar Lynch brought stability, and together they raised a son, while she continued to carve out her own path. She shone on stage with the Royal Shakespeare Company and on television in shows like Death in Paradise, proving she was more than just a Cusack sister. At 65, Niamh Cusack remains active in acting, with an estimated net worth of £2 million. She is living proof that even under the weight of family legacy and personal hardship, it is possible to stand tall, build a career, and still hold on to happiness. Barry Jackson as Eli Dakin. Eli Dakin wasn't the loudest voice in Aidensfield, but he was one of its wisest. Introduced in 1992 when Barry Jackson was 54, Eli embodied the role of a seasoned farmer, practical, grounded, and quietly humorous. He became the kind of character who reminded audiences that life in the countryside was built on resilience as much as tradition. Jackson's life, however, carried heartbreak that went far beyond the calm he portrayed on screen. In 1985, he lost his wife in a tragic accident, an event that left a wound he never fully healed. Acting became both his escape and his therapy, but the loneliness remained, even as he continued to appear in stage and screen productions. His career was steady and respected. Beyond Heartbeat, Jackson became well known to television fans for his recurring role as Dr. George Bullard in Midsummer Murders, where his calm presence was again a defining feature. Yet his professional success often masked the heavy personal grief he carried for decades. Years of heavy smoking eventually caught up with him. In 2010, he was diagnosed with lung cancer, a brutal illness that forced him to withdraw from much of his work. Friends and colleagues recalled how even in pain, Jackson retained his quiet dignity, never complaining about the suffering he endured. Barry Jackson passed away in 2013 at the age of 75. With an estate valued at around £1 million, his financial legacy was modest, but his true wealth was the respect he earned over a lifetime of playing characters that embodied honesty, strength, and humility. The cast of Heartbeat brought warmth and joy to millions, yet behind the screen many faced endings far darker than their characters. Their stories remind us how fragile life can be. Which of these tragic journeys moved you the most? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more untold Hollywood stories.